I think I can do this, but don't make a habit of it. I want to say very quickly this morning that if you really want to grow as a family, as an individual, if you really want to be spiritually minded in 2017, I just believe that there's a great opportunity that's going to begin tonight. And I want to encourage you to be here at 6 o'clock as we introduce this project that we'll be on for the entire year on Sunday evenings, and then together as families in our homes on Monday through Friday. I'm really excited about this. I think it could really change your life as a Christian, as a disciple, as one who is seeking to grow spiritually. But then my greater prayer is that it will change you as a family. If that is the fact and case for you, that it will draw us together and help us all to be built and encouraged. And so, if you can be here tonight at 6 o'clock, I will do my best to make it worth your while, and hopefully together we can make 2017 a very spiritually minded and year of growth for us here at Leoma. I'm in Ruth chapter 1, and I'm beginning a theme that I introduced on Wednesday night, and the theme is this. It's not happiness, but holiness that God has called us to. Don't tell me for a moment that everything that occurs in the story and the life of Ruth and Naomi is happy. I don't believe that. I don't believe that everything in this story is good, that it's positive in terms of earthly life and thinking. As a matter of fact, I would suggest to you that in the very first chapter there's a lot of heartache, a lot of sorrow, a lot of tragedy, a lot of difficulty. What we call that is, we call it reality, because we know that it's just real life. Sometimes real life is not fair, and sometimes real life is not enjoyable. If we get caught up in the lie of the world and society that God has called us to happiness, it's in these moments and times in life that we say, well, God, I'm not happy. What's wrong? God, life is not positive and happy for me, so therefore something must be a lie. We forget that God has not called us to happiness. He's called us to holiness. And if in being holy you can also be happy, then excellent. But don't ever lose sight of holiness by exchanging it for happiness. We began a theme this morning that I introduced on Wednesday evening. God has not called us to fame. He's called us to faithfulness. And there's a huge difference. It's not a popularity contest. It's not about who can I invite, or who can I associate as a friend, as though I'm trying to build a number of friends on Facebook so that I can have this fame and notoriety. It's about being faithful. And it's in these times in life when things are not going the way we would want them to go, and when life is troublesome, and when heartaches are many, and when things don't match up or weigh out, or when it seems unfair, it's in these times that God has called us to faithfulness. And He's asking us to be faithful. And the question really becomes, are we going to be? And so as we study the book of Ruth, and as we study the book of Job on Sunday mornings, and we ask questions like, why do good people suffer? Why do righteous people suffer? Why do bad things happen to good people? Those are some things we want to try to answer from these books, these two books, Job and Ruth, over the course of this year on Sunday mornings. God has not called us to happiness. He's called us to holiness. God has not called us to fame. He's called us to faithfulness. And no greater picture of faithfulness do I find than in Ruth chapter 1. It's the blessing of loyalty. I stopped Micah in verse 15 because in verse 16 of Ruth chapter 1, Ruth says to Naomi, I will go. Led you right up to that point with the Bible reading where when we back all the way up in Ruth chapter 1 in the first 4 verses, we learned that there was a famine in the land. We see a lot of reality here. There's a shortage of food. We got to go somewhere. Where are we going to go? We're going to go to Moab. We're going to take these 2 boys with us. What's going to happen in Moab? They're going to marry. But unfortunately in Moab, they're going to die. And so Naomi takes to Moab her husband and her 2 boys. What she brings back out of Moab is much, much different. It's reality. It's life. It's not fair. But yet it is what it is. In verse 6 of Ruth chapter 1, we start this effort to return. Naomi wants to return, but she don't want anybody to return with her. And so she begins to plea bargain with them, that is Orpah and Ruth, as Micah read it a while ago, and back and forth they go in Ruth chapter 1. Naomi says, I understand there's food. I understand God has visited the people of Israel, and there is grain in the fields. I'm going to return, but I want you 2 girls to return as well, but not with me. I want you to return to your mother's house. I don't know how old Orpah and Ruth were, but I would suggest to you they were young ladies, still of marriageable age, still of childbearing age. They were young widows. And Naomi's effort is to, listen, girls, y'all stay here in Moab, and you can find a husband a lot easier in Moab. Because let me tell you something, if we go back to Israel, if we go back to Bethlehem, there's some laws we're going to have to follow. You see, you can't just go back to Bethlehem and marry anybody because we've got laws among the Jews from God. And Naomi begins to explain that in that, well, the first person you're to marry is a sibling of your husband's. Well, your husband don't have any siblings. I don't have any more sons. I would have to marry and bear a child, and it'd have to be a boy. We don't even know if that would happen. But then you're going to have to wait for him to become an adult or of marriage age. And by that time, Naomi implies, girls, it won't be wise for you to be having children by that time. We're talking 18, 20 years at best. So why don't you girls just stay here? You can find a Moabite husband, and that's your nationality, and you can have children with them. And she even, in Ruth chapter 1, she even kisses them to release them of any emotional attachment whatsoever, as Micah read there. She even, in Ruth chapter 1 and verse 8, explains to these girls, you've dealt kindly with your husbands. You've dealt kindly with me. You're not to be blamed or to be accused. It wasn't your fault that they died. It's not your fault that my husband died, Naomi says. But through all of this, you have dealt kindly with me. And in verse 9, she kisses them, and they begin to weep. And in verse 10, they, more than one, right? They, both Orpah and Ruth, say to Naomi, no. we're going to return with you. To then which Naomi says, turn back, my daughters, verse 11. She says it again in verse 12, turn back. And she gives them this explanation of her not having any more children. Verse 13, at the very end. Naomi says, no, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Naomi felt, as most others feel when they are suffering. As we get into the book of Job in a few weeks, Lord willing, remember what Job's friends thought about Job and his suffering? Job, what have you done? What are you hiding from us? What are you not telling us? Naomi says, the Lord's hand has been against me. The Lord is out to get me. I don't know what I've done, but it's clear that my husband's dying. The only 2 children I have died. And now here I am left in a foreign land that I had to come to in order to survive, to find food. See, my life's just been filled with unfair circumstances and situations over they've only been there 10 years. This hadn't happened over the course of decades, just one decade. All of this had happened. I don't know what I did to deserve all of this, but here's what I know. The hand of the Lord is against me. Isn't that pretty common human thinking? When things aren't going right, people say, well, the Lord's punishing me. Really? Do you know that for sure? Something's going wrong for someone else, we begin to immediately, humanly conclude, well, what have they done wrong? We, like Job's friends, could be totally wrong. As a matter of fact, I would suggest to you that Naomi is totally wrong. Is the Lord causing? Is the Lord allowing? Is the Lord working? Absolutely. And as we bear out all 4 chapters of this book, you already know the story, but we'll study it more in depth. At which time, when Orpah hears this, Orpah says, you know what? She's right. I'm going home. And in verse 14, Orpah kisses her mother-in-law and departs. She says, I want to be a wife again. I want to have children. I want to remain in my own homeland. I want to stay here. I want to go back to my mother whom I left when I married this foreign boy. And thus she does. But the Bible says in Ruth 1 and verse 14 that Ruth clung to her mother-in-law. In verse 15, as Micah ended his reading, Naomi makes one more plea. She says, listen, girl. Your sister-in-law has done exactly what I asked her to do. Now you just go on and do it too. And then we come to verse 16. And what Ruth says in verse 16 is maybe 3 sermons within itself. And I'm going to prove Jimmy wrong and get you out early today. And so I won't take the time to cover it in depth, but there's 3 sermons in verse 16. And it goes something like this. The first thing she promised her was companionship. She said, where you go, I'll go. She said, where you lodge, I'll lodge. She offered her companionship. What did Naomi need? She lost her husband. She lost her 2 boys. She was going to go back to Bethlehem. She was going to go back to Israel. She was going to go back to her Jewish people, a widow, a mother having lost all of her children. In her mind, she's going to leave these daughter-in-laws in Moab where she got them, and so she's going to go back completely, utterly alone. And Ruth says, let me offer you companionship. The second thing that Ruth offers Naomi is commitment. She says, your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Commitment. Naomi, I don't understand everything, but what I've watched in these last 10 years is I've watched you live your religion. I don't understand everything about your people, and I'm about to get my eyes open to this whole kinsman redeemer thing that I didn't even have a clue existed with Boaz, and you know the rest of the story. But what I know is that whatever your people are, I'm going to commit to being that. And whoever your God is, now this is Ruth. This is a Moabite. This is a pagan woman. The Moabites had all kinds of idols and little gods, small g, that they worshipped and served. And she says, I don't know who this capital G God is, but here's what I know. I know I want that to be my God. The third thing that Ruth offers Naomi going into verse 17, is she offers her commemoration. When she says, where you die, I will die, and I will be buried. To the end of whose life did Ruth commit herself? And if you say Naomi's, you're wrong. She committed herself to the end of her life. She didn't say, now Naomi, I'll go back with you, and I'll go with you, and I'll lodge with you, and your people will be my people, and your God will be my God, and when you die, I'm out of here. Naomi, you're older than I am, so I don't think it'll take too many years, and you'll kick the bucket, and then I'll be able to come back and do what I want to do. That's not what Ruth said. Ruth said, no, I'm going there to die. Me, personally, Ruth. Where you die, Naomi, I will die. And it's in that place that I will be buried. Now, with the reality having set in, with the plea to return, now, what do I do with Ruth chapter 1 to make it real for me? Give me 5 minutes and let me try to make it real. Do you understand? Do you understand that God only supplies needs and not greeds? God has never said, I'll supply your greeds. He said, I'll supply your needs. Naomi needed food. God supplied that. Naomi learned that food had been provided for her people, so she was ready to return. God says, I'll supply for that return. Naomi said, I don't have anybody. I don't have any family. I'm going to be a widow lady, which is pretty low on the society chain back in Israel even though they were commanded to take care of them. And she was going to go back with no family. So that was going to even give her a little bit more protection. Yet God said, I'll supply Ruth. I'll give you Ruth to be there for this companionship and this commitment. God's providing for needs, and for you and I this morning, God is providing for needs, and He always will. But don't mistake needs and greeds. The second thing I want you to realize in order to make this chapter real is that attitude is based on altitude. And what I mean by that is, how close are you to God? Attitude is based on altitude. The higher you are, the better your attitude will be. We're going to talk about some tough subjects this year, if it's the Lord's will. We're going to talk about why Christian people suffer. No, why do bad things happen to good people? Why is life unfair? You see, I signed up to be a Christian, and when I signed up to be a Christian, I just thought everything was going to be perfect and merry and rosy, and everything would happen for me just like it's supposed to. And now it hadn't. My attitude stinks. I'm playing the poor, pitiful me syndrome, maybe. Perhaps what's happened is your attitude has changed because it's directly proportionate to your altitude. you've come down from God. If we're going to make Ruth chapter 1 real, we need to ask this question. Are you ready to bear the cross? 6th, 7th, and 8th graders talked about discipleship in Bible class. What is discipleship? What does it mean? The first word that was used to define discipleship in our class was commitment. Are you ready to commit? Well, now I'll bear my cross if it's lightweight. Well, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? I'll bear my cross if it's, could you find one collapsible? Maybe transferable? That'd be great, wouldn't it? So that if I didn't like it, I could give it to you. Or how about this one? You want a 30-day money-back guarantee, don't you? Sure you do. I'll bear my cross if it comes with a money-back guarantee. In other words, if I get to a spot in life that I don't like, I want to get rid of it. I just don't think it works like that. If it does, it was time for Naomi to hand hers off. What do you think? It was even time for Ruth to hand hers off. Loyalty. The blessings of loyalty. Are you going to bear your cross? You going to be loyal to Christ this year? Regardless of what may come or may not come your way? And then the last thing I want to point your attention to in Ruth chapter 1, and the lesson's yours. I read to you what Micah read to us from verse 13. I want to drop down to verse 20. After they've gotten back, Naomi says, "Don't call me Naomi anymore, for the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty." Verse 21. At the end of verse 21, the Almighty has brought calamity upon me. Now, I want you to just put yourself into Ruth's body. And go back to Moab with Ruth and Naomi and listen to Naomi say, "The Lord is out to get me. This God of heaven has dealt bitterly with me." Now I want you to fast forward into returning back to Bethlehem, and I want you to hear Naomi say, I don't want that name anymore because God has sent me away full and brought me back empty. God has dealt bitterly with me. And now here's what I want you to see. I want you to see Ruth listening to her mother-in-law, and then I want you to see Ruth going, "Come on, Naomi, I want that God to be my God." Really? I'm telling you, Ruth, that the God of heaven has dealt bitterly with me. He sent me away full and He's brought me back empty. His hand is out to get me. And there's Ruth saying, "Naomi, let me have your hand. I want that God to be my God." I'm asking you this morning, if you want to get real, let's get real. Are you ready for God to accomplish His purpose in your life, even through heartaches and disappointments? Are you ready to give God the entirety of who you are and say, "Let come what may, it is well with my soul"? Are you ready, like Ruth, to say to God, "I will go with you"? The blessings of loyalty are too far and too many to even try to name. Where He leads, I'll follow. Ruth said, "Naomi, where you lead, I'll follow." Knowing how Naomi felt about her God, Ruth said, "Naomi, where you lead, I'll follow. Though it be a cross, though it be on a hill called Golgotha, though it be death at the hands of persecution for being a Christian, where you lead, Jesus, I'll follow." Though it be mockery, though it be spit upon, though it be cursed, though it be ridiculed, where you lead, I'll follow. Though it be famine, though it be death, though it be unfair, though it be unfortunate, though it be unforeseen, where you lead, I'll follow. My hand in your hand. The blessings of loyalty. God is asking you this morning, will you go? Will you go with me? I'm ready to lead. Will you follow? Will you? We can help you in any way. Would you come right now?